Alright, so I've been sitting on this one for a few days. Like, might even be a week or two by now. But I feel like I'm getting sick, and so I need to knock this out now. It's very interesting from what I've read already. So maybe people will be interested to learn about this. Maybe people will like to hear my opinion about this. Maybe some people have not even heard about this before. Who knows? The Project Moon director did an interview, JiHoon, with this website, faminikogamer.jp, and it's been translated to English. I don't know through which magical means, but it's been linked to me. And I read a little bit of it on stream, but I decided to just skim through it and then stop since I wanted to make a video about this. I got very angry the first time around at some parts, which I will mention, don't worry. You won't get the full autism blast, but maybe a little bit. Maybe there's something in there that I will get angry about today. Exclusive interview with Project Moon CEO JiHoon and Lee Yumi. Games have the power to allow us to forgive in this cruel world. What a header, right? What a headline. What an opening to start this with. Let's see. Now, I'm not going to zoom in on any of these pictures. I will link the article in the video description, or maybe a comment or something, and then you can check it out yourself if you're interested. Here was the very embodiment of a Project Moon world. As if in a adorned library, it featured chic wood-paneled walls, a ceiling hung with warm light fixtures made from wheels, a trim leather sofa on the floor, and a bookshelf containing a Korean copy of Moby Dick. From the distance, a whimsical voice accompanied by piano floats in. Looking around, I see an antique record player playing a record. A library of arena theme song, String Theocracy, played by the indie band Millie. Yeah, my first impression of this was that I feel it's what exactly is this room for them? Is this is not in Ham Ham Pang Pang, right? Because I don't think it's mentioned where exactly they are. Whether they're in inside their studios or something. But I feel like it's very pretentious. I can't take this as serious somehow. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It feels very classy, yet at the same time the game developers, right? They're not some, well, maybe the director is some nouveau riche guy, who knows, right? This incredibly polished decor is said to be modeled after a pirate ship. And undoubtedly the captain of the ship was JiHoon himself. He founded the game studio Project Moon when he was a student, becoming a revolutionary hero of the Korean gaming industry that created the hits Lobotomy Corporation, Library of Arena, and Limbus Company, all with a common worldview. You might have heard about these games if you watched the videos on my channel. As the creator of Project Moon, known for its cruel yet striking stories, what journey has he taken that led him to create stories wildly popular around the world? How has he, as CEO, steered through the stormy seas of the game industry, an industry that is both art and business? Our team of indie intelligent network reporters were on pins and needles in anticipation for the entrance of a rough captain as we took our seats. I feel like maybe I'm just not cut out for this fluff in interviews like that. I'd rather a matter of fact, to the point kind of style. Instead of I don't care what your reporters felt like or think or something. All of this is useless information, and I'm making it worse by adding my own now, right? So let's see. This is nothing important. This is basically talking about themselves, which I couldn't care less about. The following content includes spoilers about Library of Arena, including its ending. Just in case you guys haven't played it or watched it yet, don't watch it. Play it yourself. Maybe then watch it, and then watch this video if you're so inclined. A childhood of suffering and hardship. My name is JiHoon. I'm the CEO of Project Moon, and I also serve as director and scenario writer. At my company, I've produced the titles Lobotomy Corporation, Lobotomy, Library of Arena, and Limbus Company, Limbus. Thank you for coming today. And then there's Lee Yumi, who I think she's kind of cute. I don't know. I'm Lee Yumi, a Project Moon founding member and head of the system planning team. Nice to meet you. I think she's the one that's heading panels on these game expos and stuff, right? I think she's actually kind of semi-famous. If that's the one that I'm thinking of, I could be wrong. I mean, the director's writing is good, right? But apparently, like, she's some hyper gaming genius or something. Anyway, and the dude holding the interview is Daichi Saito, CEO of WSS Playground. As a huge fan of Project Moon titles and as a representative of a rising East Asian game studio like yourself, I would like to ask you questions from both perspectives. First, I'd like to ask Mr. Kim of his life history as the leader of Project Moon. What sequence of events led you to aspire to be a game developer? By the way, I'm testing out some new microphone settings. This video will be a good point of reference for like feedback and stuff. If you're watching my streams, or if you're watching my videos, what do I sound like right now? Do I sound better or worse? Do I maybe... I feel like I need to do some mixing still. I'm peaking too much, like as far as I'm aware, but I'm not gonna stop the video now just to fiddle with it, am I? No, I won't. Try to hold off. Kim, I was born in 1992, making me 32 years old this year. Yes, the director is younger than me. This was the first thing that struck me as odd, but it's a thing that happens to me frequently because I've been stuck at like age 20 something or something. When I see young people, I still go, hello, fellow younglings. Maybe it's because of my hobbies. Maybe it's because like even at work I'm surrounded by younger people. But then again, a lot of the time I also feel like I'm so incredibly old since I can't relate to them anymore. Like the Sumer generation, and now, what are they called now? The Alpha generation? Is that like the newest one? I can't keep up. I can't keep up with like all of the skibbities and shit. It's too much for me. I don't understand it. I don't think it's funny. I just don't know what to do about it. I still listen to like music from the 80s and 90s as well, which that was before my time even. So it's kind of weird. I first came in contact with games thanks to a childhood friend of mine. Careful, that was the first autism moment I had on stream. They knew a lot about computers, and one day they said, hey, there's some fun games called Counter-Strike and Half-Life on a place called Steam, which became my first gaming experience. Half-Life especially had a big impact on my life. Disregard the Half-Life comment. The very fact that this guy didn't experience computer and PC gaming before Steam just absolutely fucking baffled me. Maybe I started my PC gaming career, which is an odd way to phrase it, too early in my life, but I remember gaming installers. I remember CDs, you know? I remember having to have a physical copy, or like creating a physical copy of a video game and installing it, and like the joy of like just owning a manual, at times not being able to read the serial number. That was a thing that came later, really. Like serial numbers were like 1999 plus, basically. And there were a few years where like that they were trying to battle piracy through serial numbers, I guess. I still remember when I got a copy of Spellforce on Christmas. We couldn't fucking figure out the fucking serial number. Something like, we tried every single possible combination, because you could try infinite amount of times, right? Especially on your computer that's not connected to the internet, really. We couldn't get it to work, and I was very distraught. I was like, I don't know, when did Spellforce release? Someone do like the research and maybe write a comment or something, because I'm sure I will be too lazy to do it while editing. So that was during Christmas, right? So we had to wait for the stores to open after Christmas. And then we went back and the game was already opened. And it's like an issue in Germany if you want to return something that's already open, especially if it's like a game. Since, well, you could have used the serial number to activate the product and then just return it, right? Get your money back. They believed us. We got a new copy. I finally was able to play Spellforce. It's a very mediocre game. There's sequels now, which I don't know how good they are. Most likely they're shit, right? Because games just, they don't tend to get better with later installments. They tend to get worse. Anyway, going back to my original point, the fact that like he grew up with Steam as like the platform for gaming already is kind of just off-putting, kind of weird. I don't know. I read that he was just about the same age. Then I read stuff like this and I think, well, he started video gaming at like 10 or something? 11? I played Counter-Strike 1.2 or something, or 1.4. I can't even remember. Like, I played a very early version of Counter-Strike against bots, mind you, because I didn't have like constant permanent internet connection. I had like a dial-up modem. And Half-Life as well, like stuff like the Orange Box and shit just didn't exist back then. TF2 didn't exist back then yet. Half-Life 2 was the first game that forced me to install Steam. And of course I had a legitimate copy, yet at the same time, considering I didn't have a, again, constant internet connection, there were workarounds for that. Anyway, at the same time I watched a lot of movies, he continues. I'd go to rental video stores about twice a week, renting about 3 movies at a time, watching just about everything. I think I was almost entirely absorbed in games and movies during my middle school years. That's very relatable, actually. Back then we didn't have much. We had video games and movies, I guess. So you must, oh fuck it, sorry, I'm like stroking out hard. So you must have come in contact with all sorts of titles since you were a kid. As a Japanese person, I feel a close sense of kinship with many aspects of Project Moon titles. Did you also consume Japanese works as well? Of course, Kim says. I love Japanese games and anime. At first I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion, but what really won me over was Gurren Lagann, which I saw when I was a middle schooler. This title is what spurred me to delve into all sorts of Japanese anime. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, The Family of Zero, Lucky Star. In terms of dramas, I watched Bambino, Trainman, and Boys Over Flowers. At any rate, I couldn't get enough. Out of these, I don't even recognize all of them. I obviously recognize like Gurren Lagann and NGE, Haruhi, Lucky Star. I didn't know what Family of Zero was. Someone linked basically like a compilation of all the things he mentioned in this interview to me, and I saw the picture for it, and I must have seen it before, but can't say I watched it. Same as Bambino, Trainman, and Boys Over Flowers. It doesn't tell me anything. But, well, Japanese media is like huge, right? Just because you haven't consumed everything doesn't mean you're not some kind of degenerate weeb. Gurren Lagann was what really got me hooked, but I think I preferred romantic comedies and what's referred to as the slice of life genre. I tend to be drawn more to conversation rooted in everyday life and exchanges of small talk rather than exaggerated end-of-the-earth action. Yep, same. One of my favorite manga is like Yotsuba, and this is like the epitome of slice of life too. I have the same preferences when it comes to games. I like that you can find such conversations in Japanese games. For example, the very refined, well thought out lines in Tales of Destiny have had a strong impression on me even to this day. Look at this dude, he definitely aged in the past few years, right? If you look at pictures from like early Ruina days compared to now, but that's the thing that happens when you get into your 30s, you age. Even Asians age. I guess Asian men age faster than Asian women though. Like they have like this huge cutoff point at like 60 or something. Before that they look like 25. The main character names in Limbus Company have all been taken from famous works of literature from around the world. Did you have a long interest in literature as well? Of course. What Limbus pays homage to is the books I can call my favorites. I've always been interested in books ever since I was a kid, starting with complete collections of children's literature. And by the time I was a teen, I was drawn to culture and immersed myself in the classics. If I had to list my top 3 literature picks, I'd choose Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. I haven't read that one. I do know about Murakami, obviously. Damien by Hermann Hesse, and The Stranger by Albert Camus. Both of which I have read, and both of which I rate somewhat highly, although I do think that I need to reread The Stranger again, close to Mersel's chapter releasing. Maybe it's a very short story, very, very short book, if you want to just pick it up and read it. I think like that's one of the easier ones. Like same as Damien. Damien is also like kind of short. There's a very slow burn in the beginning. I felt like once I got over the halfway point, it did definitely feel more engaging, more relatable to me as well, and like just faster, not faster paced, but just more interesting in general. But that could have been me. It's very interesting that he's choosing these books too, right? I also wonder if we're gonna get like any Murakami or Norwegian Wood references, especially coming up in Limbus. Who the fuck knows, right? I mean, they've shown that they're not just referencing the books the sinners are about, but like a lot of literature in general. Damien in particular was one novel that saved me as I read it during my mentally unstable adolescent years. It gave me the will to hold on to hope and continue living. I still sometimes reread it. The Stranger was a novel I pushed myself to read while in middle school, but didn't fully comprehend, but strangely, I had a desire to understand it someday. So I read a whole bunch of related books and their analyses, and in the process came across existentialism, which was how I became interested in philosophy. Yeah. I guess that's it, right? Like sometimes you need to let it rest a little. You need to maybe read up some additional information to get like some background on what was meant by the author. It's not always entirely clear. I also think it's very interesting with works like Damien. It really depends on the age and stage of life you are at when you're reading books like these. Damien is like it is like the synthesized coming of age story. Really, it's so boiled down to just this process of like aging and accepting the world inside of you and around you. And I am somewhat sad that I didn't read it before, yet at the same time I was able to experience it now after going through all of these things, after basically growing up and maturing. I'm still a huge man-child, mind you. And looking back on my life while reflecting on the novel, rather than reading it and maybe being able to relate better to some of the early parts, but not quite having been there when it comes to the later parts, right? Yeah. So your enthusiasm for games, movies, literature, and fiction of all kinds is what became the basis for your current work. Kim says, "This is the first time I'm saying this publicly, but I was mentally and physically abused by my mother as a young child," which is very odd, yet also like it's very brave. It's an odd and brave thing to admit, especially in an interview, right? I mean, it's not that weird. I think it happens a lot, actually. People, I don't know if it's like a cultural thing, like maybe it's a Korean thing, maybe it's like an Asian parents thing where they're like very harsh on the children. It happens like in Europe as well, right? I'm not happy with like my relationship I had with my parents too. If you're like watching my streams or something, you might have picked up a few cues there. It's just that I guess he tried to give like background information for like what's to come in the interview. I do think though that he could have done this without mentioning it. Just saying it, yeah, I guess it's kind of brave. Like I have no other way to put it, really. No other way to put it. For me, in such a situation, fiction was also a way of escaping my harsh reality to another world, which is it's the purpose of like all entertainment, right? The purpose of all entertainment is to forget about like what is currently going on in your actual real life, right? It's escapism. Can you see? Escapism. At the same time, I think I also learned through stories about human emotions and how families are. As I said earlier, I tended to be drawn to scenes of everyday conversation, and I think this is the source for that. In my youth, it was my dream to quickly move out of the family house. I threw myself into creating games with the determination to never return to my parents. Several times I failed and was overcome with despair, but deep within my heart, I had an anger-like feeling that kept me together and that would boil over, making me stand back up. I basically developed ego because I tried to make video games. My dark childhood memories of suffering formed the basis of my creations. The appeal of Project Moon works is undeniably in their stories. They are tragic, yet leave you with a feeling of hope in some way. They look very serious about this. These are some very, like, I don't know what to call it, very serious, like, photographs of these people. Kim, I'm in pursuit of beautiful songs of praise for people which shine the light of hope on dark lives. What a way to put it, right? What a poet. Damn. For example, when developing Arena 2, I emphasized deeply with Angela and Roland, and wrote a plot so that they could overcome the dark pasts. After Arena's release, we received feedback from players who had played the game saying that Angela's action seemed rushed. This was something that even I myself had not realized, but the reason for this was perhaps because my wish to overcome the past in my heart was reflected as a glimmer of hope for the two characters. To be honest, Angela sometimes seemed hasty to me when I played Arena. However, I was swept away by something compelling. I was confused by Angela and the enormity of her existence while also emphasizing with her, and in the end I was even made to feel like I wanted to forgive her, the interviewer says. It might be insensitive for me to ask this, but Does the character of Angela symbolize something? And Kim answers to this. A presence that a player can grant forgiveness to. Mind you, can, not has to, right? Okay. So if you're like if you're an Angela apologist, well, that's your prerogative. If you are a very staunch Day of the Magnet follower, then I salute you. I see you. I appreciate you. And I am too. One of these people. This is my own personal story, but as I mentioned before, I was abused by my mother and it was very traumatic for me. For this reason, I still haven't forgiven her. However, I hope that someday I can come to a place where I can forgive her. I believe this conflict in which you can't truly forgive someone, but you want to, has been experienced not just by myself, but a considerable number of people. One theme entrusted to Angela and Roland, and more strictly speaking, the story and characters, is exactly this conflict surrounding forgiveness. I think it's very interesting to hear about people's opinions. Like like tell me your opinion if you're watching this, if you're listening to this right now. Did you forgive Angela after playing Arena? Like maybe even before the ending, maybe you were able to emphasize with her even earlier, like as soon as we got a glimpse into her backstory and the amount of suffering she had to go through. Well, it was alluded to in Lobotomy Corporation already, but I guess Ruina really hammered it home. Maybe you didn't forgive her. Maybe you were like more how should I put it? Like even angry at her than Roland was. Obviously, for Roland, it was like it was hard for him because Angela's actions pretty much doomed his entire life. Yet she didn't do it on purpose. Although she did say that, yeah, she would do it again, like all over if she had to, right? So there was no real remorse. Yet at the same time, like she wasn't able to predict what would happen when she did it, and she obviously influenced a lot of lives and fates with her actions. So Roland finding it in himself to forgive her after spending so much time with her, after seeing her grow as like a real human being, I guess. That's good, that's nice, that's well and all. It's obviously also the canon ending. I, however, do think that, yeah, no, fuck you, Angela. That's what I think, basically. At the same time, Angela herself is also a symbol of the player's wishes. The world is entirely full of injustice. However, even if you were to resolve these injustices one by one, new problems would crop up, leading people to give up, thinking that the world won't get better anyway. Angela is also a woman devastated by the reality of the story's world. Angela is the object that asks the player whether they can truly forgive a woman who has been devastated by the world's injustices and has grown rash. The question is, and it's like it's a never-ending spiral, you need to break out of it kind of thing, right? If Angela wasn't able to forgive if Angela wasn't able to forgive basically everyone or anyone involved in her creation, if Angela wasn't able to forgive the world, why are we, the players, or like Roland, expected to forgive her? Does this make us the better people? Does this really mean anything? Or is it just like, will it always continue, or will someone just forgive someone else on a whim somewhere down the line? Like if I don't forgive her and in turn like kill her and like people involved with her, will someone else rise up and get revenge on me, or will they forgive me? Like it's always this conundrum of like, oh, if you kill the villain, you're no better than them. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always make sense. Yet at the same time, forgiveness is of course like a value that is very important, not just in like religion and religious education, but just ethics in general. Being able to forgive a person despite their shortcomings or like their mistakes is something that is learned, I admit. Like not everyone can do it, and at times you just can't do it. Like I myself am not able to forgive a lot of people of my past, and I know it might be better, and it wouldn't be easy for me, definitely, because it's very hard for me to do, but it might be better for my general mental health if I drop this baggage that I'm carrying along by just still being angry at these people. But it's hard to do, right? It's very hard to do. Like how the fuck do you enter this like zen state of like, oh, I don't care anymore, I forgive you. Is it even not caring anymore? Like not caring anymore, like that's apathy. Apathy is like the opposite of like anger and love, really. It's like a triangle, isn't it? Oh, no, that doesn't make much sense. Genie chimes in. Firstly, I want to thank you for sharing such a personal story. With that said, I'd like to talk about my own personal experience. As impertinent as they may be. To tell the truth, I have friends who are Project Moon fans, and one of them is a woman who experienced domestic violence and was forced to live in a shelter in Japan. I understand that your experience was reflected in only one part of the game, but I would venture to say that there are a lot of people in the world who suffer under similar circumstances, and I would like to tell you that your work has been a great solace to them. That's interesting, because abuse can not just be physical, right? It can also be like a mental thing, like being locked in for millions of years, like Angela was, I guess. It's just that there's so many people out there, so many fates. Like at times it might feel childish when people say, "Oh, X game or X piece of media has touched my heart. It has made me really think. It has left me with like a profound new way of like living." Because at the same time, it's just, lol, it's a video game. Or, oh my god, it's just a manga. Or it's a fucking song and it's called Wet Ass Pussy. Yet at the same time, like, what else are we supposed to derive any development from if it's not? Well, even then, even if it's like an outside force, the real development happens inside of us. Like it's intrinsic in the end, right? We get this stimulus from outside, and that's what really helps us go along and move forward, right? I think it's kind of nice that there's people that can relate to different viewpoints and stories at times. It's the reason why I like story-heavy games so much, actually, because you don't always need to immerse yourself. You don't always need to find yourself in these stories. It's kind of nice to just be someone completely different, and go through their hardships. And sometimes there's something to take along there too, right? But I do think that if you can actually relate to something on a real life level, basically, it's pretty good. It's this fucking representation thing, right? Again, like, I don't think representation matters this much, because I don't need to be represented in every fucking game. I can immerse myself in a female main character as well, right? Because I'm not an idiot. I'm not retarded. I have fantasy. But again, like, if there's something for everyone out there, I guess that's a good thing. And there is something for everyone out there, just by definition. Like, considering that people are so different to each other, and everyone is doing something for anyone else, like there must be something that hits your spot too, right? The problem is trying to force people to create something to specifically cater to you, instead of catering to other people, or catering to the masses or something, which isn't always a good thing either, right? It's like why indie games are good, actually, because indie games are not produced for the masses. Anyway, Kim continues, I'm very grateful that they felt a personal connection to the game. My experience is ultimately only reflected partially in my creations, as is the case with other creators, and I did not intentionally aim for a specific theme or try to draw on people's sympathy. I do, however, think it was the result of me succeeding at conveying something from my depths in a way that I wanted to write. By the way, this is the part where I stopped reading pretty much on stream, so all of this is somewhat novel to me, except for a few paragraphs at the very end of this interview. So all of my reactions will be genuine at this point. We've received a lot of feedback from fans around the world, and a lot of those fans tell of family issues, and some tell us of other painful memories. To be told by such players that we cheered them up makes me very happy and gives me a sense of reward. This is actually something I can very relate to, because trying to cheer people up, trying to make people happy, trying to brighten people's day is the entire reason why I'm doing this right now. It's the entire reason why I'm doing YouTube and Twitch, like all of this stuff to begin with. It's my complete what is it called, like raison d'être, like, pardon my French, I'm not very good at it. It's my reason for existing, I think would be a literal translation for it. I love making people happy. I love, like, I'm a people pleaser, pretty much. I do this at work.
A good day is when I can help people, even if it's like, I do very mundane work, mind you. It's very simple. I stock shelves and I help people find the things they're looking for. And if they ask me where's article X, and I show them and they thank me, it makes me happy. I'm very simple like that. I'm also like spending almost all of my money on both Secretary and Babby, because I do derive more pleasure from them being happy than I do making myself happy, even though it's kind of selfish still, right? Because I am getting happiness from this. It's kind of weird. I don't know what to call this. But again, I can relate. And I wonder if this is like, is this a common trait in people? Like trying to make others happy? I guess it can go like into a very self-hurting and obsessive state as well, where you desperately try to make someone happy, right? Where you just disregard yourself completely. This is not good. This is not good. Like I myself too, I know where to draw the line. I know that I have to sometimes prioritize myself in order to long-term make other people happy, right? So if I just destroy myself during 1 week just because I want to make everyone else happy and like placate their wishes, that doesn't make much sense. I need to look after myself, then I can look after others longer and better. So I do wonder if he learned that same lesson, and I think it's kind of wholesome that he's like, even through this very dark and edgy story writing that he's doing, he still found a way to reach that goal, right? I think the player choosing between forgiving someone or not forgiving them is an experience that can only come from a game. Between forgiving someone or not forgiving them, pardon me, that was like, it's not that weird. It can only come from a game. How much of this was intentional? I don't agree with that. Obviously, it's like an A or B choice that can happen very easily in a game, but you yourself can choose to forgive or not to give on a daily basis. So maybe there's like something lost in translation there. To forgive or not forgive is the sole choice given during Arena. Yeah, that was good. I like games with lots of different choices, obviously. I'm a fan of visual novels, that kind of way. Yet at the same time, when you have like a singular, very important choice at the end that determines the ending, for one, it makes it very easy to achieve both endings and go back and like reread it and stuff. And secondly, it just drives home the point of like, okay, you've read up until now, what will you do, right? It makes you stop, it makes you think, which is exactly what happened when I got to that point during Arena. For me, it was an exceedingly difficult choice to make, and that's why I wanted the players to think about it seriously, leading me to choose the multiple choice format. I personally think that forgiveness is the correct choice. If you go on with life holding on to anger, the only thing that will remain in the world is tragedy. But if you reflect back on yourself, you'll see a part of you that you haven't been able to forgive. Forgiveness can be difficult and painful. Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask all the players what they would do. Choices force the player to take action. The choice existing is the reason why the question arises. The player must answer it. Obviously, like forgiving Angela is the canon choice, right? It's the true end. There must always be like a true end. Are there any games out there with like no true ending? I guess if there's no sequel, it can remain ambiguous and vague, right? What is the actual developer's choice of ending? But with Arena it was very obvious. Angela and Roland overcome the personal issues after this choice, and I feel that there was a representation of strong hostility towards society, the Wings, and the city. Was there a reason why the city was depicted as a place of distrust, poverty, and hatred? Korea, I guess. Korea. I think that too is a projection of my personal outlook on the world. I'm timid and distrustful of others, and I'm always tormented by anxiety. I tend to have a bias that makes me look at this world as a cruel place, where the stronger prey on the weaker. It is, I think that's very realistic actually. I don't think that has anything to do with like timidness or anxiety. I think that's just straight up realism right there. Even with interpersonal relationships, you may have a good relationship temporarily, but you may also soon be betrayed due to the other's interest. You may be abandoned at a lonely point. Again, that is like, as well, I don't know if like, not everyone experiences that, right?
obviously. Some people, they go through life completely happy. But I think most of us experience betrayal and abandonment and loneliness at one point in life and have to come to terms with it. Some of us break. Others come out on top, right? They come out stronger. But I want to believe that even in such a world, there's warmth and love somewhere. But I can't believe it. My world is a mix of these conflicted feelings. Poor guy really. I think he needs a hug. I would love to just shake his hand and hug him. I'm not sure, like, how are Koreans with like hugging? Do they like it, or is this like too personal? I was born and raised in a Korean city, so the settings of my works tend to be centered around the city and my Korean mindset and the way of thinking that may be reflected in my works. Even if I'm not aware of it, definitely, right? I mean, we all know the Korean cannibals that look cute and I would like to kiss. As content consumed globally, I'm always anxious about my games not reflecting diverse views. However, generally speaking, I cannot depict what I have not seen. True, and it would be retarded to try. Even if I could, I wouldn't be fully convinced of it, so it would be the same as not being able to depict it anyway. Yes, don't do it. Don't try to do it. It's fake, and it would definitely dilute the writing and the intention behind it. One author who influenced me was Jorge Luis Borges. Don't know this guy. Sorry. Never heard of him. Well, I might have heard of him, and I could look him up right now, but come on, guys. I came across him when I was in college, and that's when I learned how to build worlds of magical realism. You make use of everyday words and environments as far as you can see while blurring the lines between reality and fiction, drawing the player into a fantastical world before you realize it. By doing this, I can share my own personal sensations as one worldview. Fuck, we're not even halfway through this thing. Can you believe it? It's gigantic. Encounters and the dawn of Project Moon. We're getting a little bit into the backstory of Project Moon in general now. Thank you for telling us what may be considered the heart of your creations. Moving forward, please tell us the sequence of events that led you to establish Project Moon and develop games. I try to get through this like chop, okay? Kim, when I was in my 3rd year of middle school, I asked myself what motivation, if any, I had for life. I was going to have to get a job anyway. I wanted it to be something that I liked. And what I like is creating stories. There are a lot of mediums for conveying stories, but especially like games. The most direct impetus for me was the Korean game Arcturus, which, if there's any interest for me to play it, I have obtained a copy. So let me know, write a comment. This game is composed of 2 parts with a big plot twist in the middle. Apparently it's very Final Fantasy-like. The fantasy world depicted in the first part of the game transforms into a sci-fi dystopia in the second part. Spoilers! This trick was a refreshing shock for me, and I became aware of the possibilities of storytelling within games. I thought I wanted to be able to depict such emotionally moving stories, and I decided to enter the gaming industry. Was your choice of school related to games too? They ask. I decided to major in computer engineering in college. I figured that if I aspired to work in the gaming industry, it wouldn't hurt to learn programming first. Yeah, I guess. That's when I encountered an issue, however. Mathematics is a required subject for programming, but I was really awful at it. Oh, he's literally me. Also, I also had an interest in psychology at the time, but unfortunately it was not a choice offered at that university. In the end, I wasn't able to fit in at that school and dropped out, entering in the media department at Asia University instead. At Asia, there were courses and a club specifically for games. The game developing club at Asia is where I met several of my team members, including Yumi, which is, that is like freaking wholesome, right? You met them so early on and they're still together creating games. Amazing that you already had assembled the people who would become the core members of Project Moon later. Yes, but we had a lot of setbacks in the beginning. As soon as we'd start a project, we'd fail. It happened over and over. The reason for us failing so much was due to my immature personality at the time. Interesting how he personally blames himself, right, instead of just the team, like all of them, right? I never had great communication skills to begin with, so I wasn't able to come to a mutual understanding with my team members. Ultimately, I was in my 4th year of college without any of my works coming to fruition, and I brooded over that fact, thinking that if I couldn't complete a game by the time I graduated, then maybe I didn't have what it took to aspire to be a game developer. I became determined and invited 4 members, including Yumi, to put a lot of effort into making a successful game. That game was Lobotomy Corporation. I think I can say that Lobotomy Corporation has also personally altered the course of my life, really. Like, Lobotomy Corporation was the game that really popped off my channel, right? Most of you, most likely, will have found me through either Lobotomy or Arena. it would actually be very interesting to know if you're listening to this, like if you've gone through the past 40 minutes of this interview and me adding fluff, please tell me, how the fuck did you find me? Why did you find me? Did you just like YouTube Lobotomy Corporation, or like YouTube search Ruina or something, or did it get recommended to you or something? Obviously I could look at analytics and shit, but I think it's more interesting to hear it from the horse's mouth. And I don't trust Google Analytics, to be honest. Like they're lying to me. But this might be a tinfoil hat moment, but yeah. So yeah, Lobotomy Corporation. It's what really helped me just find my position of what I like to do and make with YouTube. I did record a lot of games before that, mind you. Like if you go to my playlists, and like all of my collector playlists, they're in chronological order, and you see what I played before Lobotomy. But that was really, it was a game changer. It was a nice game changer. It was also a great game. Holy shit. So you, Yumi, saw Kim struggling during his college years. How did you view him from your perspective? Although we belonged to the same club, I had been making games by myself with Unity until my second year, so we weren't very involved with each other. I felt like I was watching his ups and downs from a distance. The first time I worked on a team with him was for Lobotomy. At the time, Lobotomy for me was supposed to be my graduation project. That's because I was trying to get hired at a normal, pre-existing game company after graduation. Korean game companies place a lot of importance on your portfolio. For that reason, I wanted to make a graduation project that would impress the people in charge of hiring, and that was my motivation. But then he tried starting up his own game company. Like, very, very early on, very young, right? They were just coming out of university. Also, imagine if they hadn't done that. Imagine if they had just dropped Lobotomy Corporation like a hot turd and then moved on to like different, like maybe working at Shift Up or something. That would have been a windfall. That would have been good for any of them, right? Yet at the same time, just looking back on it, Lobotomy made a lot of money. For a first big project, for these fresh people, it made a lot of money. Same as Ruina. Now they're swimming in money with Limbus. So they did everything correct there, like despite all of the hardships. Ha 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 ha, you had a lot of confidence, the interviewer laughs. Kim, but I didn't, because up until that point I had failed again and again. In fact, I was worried whether Lobotomy was a game that would attract users' interest. What gave me a hunch that the game might be a success was when we did crowdfunding on Tumblebug, which is like the Korean Kickstarter or something, right? We were backed with 13 million South Korean won from over 460 people. I can't tell if this is a lot or not, sorry. From our point of view, there was a big response and a lot of money. With this result, all my team members and I were convinced that this game would make it. So in 2016, we incorporated Project Moon. When did I... 2016 was when I started doing YouTube. Can you fucking believe it? And I heard of Lobotomy Corporation before. Like, I heard of it very early on, and it was on my wish list a long time. But I heard like very mixed, leaning towards bad reviews of it. And it was in a broken state. That was like, I guess it was the first translation, which was very badly machine translated. That's when I first found the game. So after it was somewhat fixed, and apparently they hadn't dropped it because there was another thing I was afraid of back then, I decided to pick it up, and it was in a finished state by then, and I was perfectly fine with the translation at this point, with like the second, not machine translation, but the second one they commissioned or something. I don't even know who did this. And then obviously like Casual Watson and the likes came along and did like the third translation, which is like the very polished one, which changed a lot of the terminology though for me. And I and a lot of people that have played it very early on obviously still cling to that like great love for us kind of thing, instead of like Grantor's Law, for example, and like some of the abnormalities got renamed to fit better with like Ruina and stuff. Can't say I'm a huge fan of the new translation, even though like with the old one, obviously there were a few things which were very hard to interpret, maybe even conveyed wrong at times. However, one of the best parts of playing Lobotomy and uploading it to YouTube was like the engagement with the Korean people, giving insights of like the actual Korean script, and like maybe maybe even the intentions behind what was said. I really like that. There were a few people that dropped a wall of texts on my videos, and I did read them all, and I did reply to... Back then I was able to reply to every single comment. It's just not possible anymore these days. Sometimes I just have nothing to say. I'm very sorry. I did very much like that. I did very much like the explanation on the Jewish Kabbalah from like the Korean community, and like from other people as well that have played lobotomy before me, and I had a lot of understanding of the story and could clear up any of the mistakes I did when playing. By the way, Yumi has been by your side since the founding of the company, supporting Project Moon all the time. Could you please tell us what role she has within the company? And he says, Lee Yumi is like Project Moon's canary in a coal mine. Her reactions to our initial story and art ideas are very instructive for us when making our works. Of course, we don't necessarily go with only her opinion. I sometimes get my way too. Sometimes. First, we show her our story and art drafts, and depending on her reaction, we decide whether to use them or not. If she doesn't approve, we start over. For me personally, she's been by my side this whole time. We do quarrel sometimes, and she's an important partner to me. It's cute. In the past, I was annoyed at her for not understanding what I say, but recently we've come to fully understand each other. I guess they took time to settle in. We were really at odds with each other during college, and there was no end to our fighting. So much has happened. I think we've both matured since then. From your point of view, Yumi, what is Kim like at the company? And Yumi says, maybe like an absolute monarch. He's like an entity of enormous determination that unifies our company and our game worlds. I remember hearing that at From Software they developed their games by having Hidetaka Miyazaki tell other scenario writers of stories that he thought of, and then having them write down what they heard as if it was an oracle. So instead of him writing everything, he's relaying it. It's like a little bit like word of mouth. It gets changed slightly by going through someone else's head. It's actually a very interesting thing. I didn't know that. That's cool. Kim's style is similar. The writers take a look at the scenarios and plots that he has written and skillfully supplement them with dialogue and situational context, expanding the story with their own imaginations. I think because our stories are created with this multi-level process, there's also room for the players to participate in how the stories are interpreted. Yeah, I like that. So by supplementing this the context, do you mean that Kim has left some things undecided and the writers are filling in the blanks? And Kim says, for example, let's say I wanted to make a boss character into a creepy, terrifying creature. I narrow down the general image and direction, then hand things over to Yumi and the others, and they decide on that boss skills pattern and skill names. Then afterward, all the chiefs and members of the scenario team, effects team, art team, and SD team expand the work based on the direction that I want, and we create the game while checking work processes and results and providing feedback. Very interesting to see how they're all involved, basically. I wonder if that's always been the case, or I wonder if it's better or worse to do it with like a bigger team. Obviously, they've grown in size ever since Lobotomy Corporation. So we continue on with success and change. Well now, Lobotomy was Project Moon's first successful game. What response did the game generate when it was first released? And Kim said, what started a boost in sales was when a famous YouTuber streamed the game. Hey, they mean me! Obviously they don't, right? I do wonder if they are aware of like every single person playing or streaming the game, or like I wonder if they're even aware of like the Western market to begin with, or if like obviously there's like always a huge influx of players, especially with Lobotomy Corporation somehow, whenever a VTuber plays the game. And there are some Japanese VTubers that have picked up this game over time, some EN VTubers as well, as far as I'm aware. There are a few people that have started but not completed the game in recent years. I don't know what it looks like now. I just know that when I finished it, apparently I was one of the few that had the determination to do it. Pretty sure there must be more people by now, right? Because people have now seen that it's well worth it to go through this. The moment of catharsis and like happiness that you get by beating day 49 and having the victory lap 50, it's like unprecedented in games for me, and like it hasn't been replicated since as well. So anyway, when that happened, we instantly sold several thousand copies. However, the success didn't last long, and we gradually grew more and more broke. When sales were really low, it was painful just looking at the numbers. And the interviewer says, I understand what you mean. When we ran out of funds and had to borrow from the bank in the middle of developing Needy Streamer Overload, so these guys made NSO, I lost 7 whole kilograms, that's a good diet. Exactly, just when we were a month away from our bank balance reaching 0. We announced on Steam that we weren't able to continue with production and that we'd stop any further development once we implemented the content that we had promised during crowdfunding. To be honest, I felt that I felt then that it was the end of us. This is what I heard, that they basically stopped developing Lobotomy Corporation. It's also why I wasn't interested for the longest time anymore. Because you don't early access buy into a game that's not gonna get finished, right? Like that's the biggest case of a blue balls you could give yourself. But that announcement changed our fate. Fans who felt sorry for Lobotomy voluntarily started promoting the game. Fans from Korea, China, Japan, America, and Russia. Fan communities from all sorts of countries recommended the game on social media, buying extra copies to give to friends. It's beautiful, right? It's like, it's all over the globe. It's also what I've seen on YouTube. Like, people are commenting in all kind of languages. Like, people from all the nations are watching my videos too. I very much like that. I love how we're all connected through this weird ass game. Through the spread of such generous support, our sales numbers were saved. Thanks to the fans, we were just able to make it out a tough period. It was a game that was saved by its fans precisely because they loved it so much. What a beautiful story. What region in particular did the game sell in? And Kim says it was probably a big hit in China. We didn't do any marketing with a particularly country or language in mind, but it seems the game matched tastes there. At the onset of Lobotomy, we had planned to go with an American cartoon style like it's in Adventure Time, but it didn't seem right, so we started over. That was when we worked on emphasizing the Asian animation style, but it was more like a change made to fit with my creative sense rather than intentional marketing. Fortunately, the result was that it also appealed to Eastern Asian countries like Japan and China. Honestly, I love the Lobotomy Corporation style. As much as I got used to the Ruina stuff, and like the CGs in Ruina are just absolutely batshit insanely nice, I miss the Lobotomy Corporation style. It was so good. It had simplicity. Also made Bina look fucking hot. Man, I fucking love blocky characters. Oh, I love Lego in Minecraft. After Lobotomy's success, you achieved success with both Ruina and Limbus too, and I believe each time your company grew in scale. Could you go into detail about how your team has expanded after each turning point and how your management methods change and respond to your new size? Oh, here we go. Maybe we'll get some insight. As I mentioned earlier, we had 4 original members from when we created our team for Lobotomy while in college. Afterward, we recruited several people from both within our school and elsewhere, and we eventually completed the game with 9 members. At first, we really fumbled around looking for people. We put out public job offers, of course, and we also visited nearby colleges looking for the right people and asked acquaintances if they knew anyone. For example, we even hired someone after seeing the interesting artwork they displayed at the campus festival. For our second title, Ruina, we mostly hired people through a Korean gaming industry recruiting website called GameJob. Man, I wish I got a game job right now. I think we reached about 20 employees, and we've continued to use the website since. Currently, we have about 50 members involved on Limbus, which is, I guess it's kind of medium-sized, I don't know. It's definitely enough to create a video game, in my opinion. So you grew from 4 members to 50 members in a span of 8 years. I'm sure that must have changed your own duties and your management of the company. From the start, I never wanted to see the team members as just numbers on paper, but rather as individuals with their own personalities. Not the first time he says this. That's why I took care to communicate as meticulously as possible and to create close relationships with my members. However, when we surpassed 20 members, I started to exceed my capacity. Pretty sure you can keep tabs on 50 people, right? I mean, yeah, obviously it's hard. You don't get to see everyone every day, but it's still possible, I think. Before, he was really obsessed with micromanaging things. He'd rather have his own way of doing things fail than go with someone else's okay way of doing things, and he was never satisfied unless he had control of everything, Liu Mi says. We also had to do a lot of retakes. Even if we were really far along with something, he'd make us redo it all from the start if he didn't like it. When things were really bad, he would sit next to the person in charge of UI and give directions for each and every pixel. Yeah, like that's a perfectionist, right? It's something you need to drop, because like that's gonna destroy yourself. The unreasonable fuck, I'm retarded. The unreasonableness, I guess. I do understand what the word means, I just can't read it, sorry. Came back to bite me, eventually taking a toll on me mentally and physically. I think things changed for the worse just before the release of Limbus. When I was in the middle of telling the team how to improve things, I suddenly felt this unbearably intense pain behind my left eye. Jeez. I ran to the hospital right away and had an MRI taken. However, they couldn't find anything wrong. In the end, they said it was stress related. They said I had been on the verge of having a stroke. Jesus, dude. Again, I didn't read this before. This is bad. I had endured strong mental pressure up until that point, so it took me by surprise. That incident made me rethink my work style, focusing on trusting and relying on my team members more. It would be kind of ironic if this is the point where their games turned worse, in my opinion. It could be. I don't take everything upon myself now, and I try to leave operational decisions to each team lead as much as possible. No, obviously I loved Rena. Following Kim's change of direction, I had to fully commit to my role as a team leader. However, as I used more time for management, my time for actual work decreased, Lee says. To compensate for this, I allocated my work to other team members. As a result, we came to a good division of labor within the company. And then the interviewer asks, though that may have alleviated things to some extent, I'm sure you still work extremely hard as both original scenario creator and CEO. How do you manage things mentally? Kim answers, I'm not confident enough to say that I self-manage very well. I have bipolar disorder, and even on my days off, I'm unable to rest mentally due to anxiety. He's a broken man, isn't he? Jesus Christ. I've been searching for a way to manage my stress while going to counseling and taking medication for the past several years. If you ask me if the exhausting work is tough, I'd say it is. But that's the only way that I can work. That's why I need to get along with myself as I am. My biggest stress reliever is games. When I'm immersed in an interesting game, I forget all my troubles, and my anxiety and exhaustion disappears. Recently, I've liked Elden Ring. I completely understand how playing a good game can make you forget about everything, though I haven't found a game I can immerse myself in recently. Kim answers, I've been impatient for the Elden Ring DLC to come out myself, so that was like before that happened, right? Which is, when was that? Like a month or two ago even by now? Kind of crazy, right? Time flies. Genie, speaking of games, I get the impression again and again that Project Moon works are designed like board games and card games. I especially get that impression from Library of Arena. Do you like board games too? Yes, I was especially hooked on board games during my school years, and I still love them now. After all, the title Library of Arena comes from a tabletop RPG I made when I was a student to play with friends called Library of Babel. I enjoy them as a hobby, of course, but board games also are useful when it comes to making video games. When creating Arena, I recommended a board game for my team to play every week. I told them to carefully observe the designs and try to learn the game rules and regulations. We can see some Dominion here. We can see some like figurines. Is that fucking Hestia? She's the best dear. Should indie game studios receive investing? Oh, what a controversial question, eh? Are they still indie then? I'd like to ask you more about your position as CEO. Recently, you received investing from the major game company Dev Sisters. How did you come to this decision? There's something I learned from experience regarding investment. Investment offers come when you don't need them, and never when you do need them. Yeah, I guess. When we received the proposal from Dev Sisters, it was right after the release of Arena. At that point, our sales performance wasn't that great, and the proposal wasn't strategic but more financial, so it guaranteed our creative freedom. For the time being, it would allow us to catch our breath financially, and even if Arena failed, we'd have it in our portfolio that we had received funding from Dev Sisters when the time came to raise funds for our next project. If it had been a strategic investment, one in which we'd lose our independence, I think I would have turned it down. By strategic investment, do you mean that the investor would take the rights to the management of the company to some extent? And by financial investment, do you mean that they would just provide funds and not have a say in things? That's right. If we report that we simply received investment from a major game company, it would give the impression that we were bought out or something. I wouldn't want it to be misunderstood in that way. To put it precisely, a venture capital company affiliated with Dev Sisters is the one who funded us. Fortunately, the representative of the company understands the gaming industry and fully grasped our concerns, proceeding with things in a tactful way. Such a nice picture of these here, right? There are a lot of indie developers in Japan too, who aren't sure whether to receive funding or not. Do you have any advice about receiving funds from another company? Kim says, it's hard to say because I really think it depends on the situation. First, if you're broke, you don't have a choice but to receive funding. But if you're not broke, then I think you should avoid strategic investing or publishing contracts that would make you fork over part of your management rights. At first glance, the conditions for strategic investments may seem more favorable. However, if, after receiving that investment, the game you develop becomes commercially successful, you may lose control over how your work is handled. Worst case scenario, your entire IP may be snatched out from under you. Yep, it's a really bad thing to happen, right? People should stop chasing money and should value their intellectual property more, in my opinion. It might be okay if you're the type who can go ahead and begin development for another project without concern for the previous project, but if you're the type like me who wants to keep hold of your own work and not let others touch it, then you should carefully consider the conditions of the contract. I wouldn't recommend looking for an investor yourself, since the conditions tend to be restrictive. After all, as I said earlier, the more you look for an investor yourselves, the less likely you are to find one. During lobotomy, we sent email requests to a number of companies that we thought might invest in us, but we didn't get a single reply. I sometimes give money to creators from an investor's position, but I don't invest in creators who ask themselves for funds. They have to have the attitude of like, I'll take your money if you insist, or else I don't want to give it to them. Wow, what a diva. I myself don't want to take orders from anyone. Up until this point, we've received acquisitions proposals multiple times, but even if I sold the company and made a lot of money, I just used that money as capital to create a new company where I could freely make games. Wow, okay. So remaining and leaving would be the same thing. And if that's the case, then I'd rather remain and continue Project Moon. Oh man, I desperately want them to release merch overseas as well. Jesus Christ. I wonder why they haven't done that yet. It shouldn't be that hard to set up, really. We've heard the history of your company's growth since its formation up until now, and I feel yours is a perfect example for up-and-coming creators. In other words, your future could be a future possibility for us too. What is next for Project Moon? I'd like to hear about your goals as an organization as well as your own personal goals. Okay, and this is like the important part, right? First, let me talk about our goals for Project Moon as an organization. In the past, we set clear goals for each category to make it to the top in any way. For example, for Arena, our goal was to exhibit at Tokyo Game Show, which I believe they did. However, I've achieved most of the goals I set as a student, and I feel in order to aim higher from this point, it would have to come at a price or require some sort of sacrifice, pardon me. So then, should I heartlessly abandon all my current allies and fans to grow the company? I don't think so. Rather, I'd like to pursue our own creative ideals with the members we have now, rather than maximize profits. As I said before, I'd like to make the company into a warm place, like a family. Our challenge is how to balance this warmth with surviving in the reality of the gaming industry. As for my personal goals, first from a creative perspective, I'd like to make a 3D open world action RPG someday. That's lofty. That's a lofty dream. I mean, they can't even do anything else right now other than Limbus, with the limited amount of members they have, so how far into the future is he thinking? But for the time being, I think I'd like to continue making stories and communicating with fans, and to always look at the world through a filter of curiosity and fun. I don't currently have a role model game creator, but if I had to pick someone, it would be Hideo Kojima, which is just about the worst person he could have ever picked, I guess. I'd like to continue in a position where I could pursue my own vision independently, just as he does. Kojima doesn't even really make games anymore, I don't think. I'm not sure he ever has. My biggest fear is death. Not death as a metaphor, but actual death. I'm currently truly afraid of dying. However, where there is fear, there's also hope. I'd like to believe that if I continue creating without slacking off, then I will be able to leave this world with peace of mind, free from fear. That is my ultimate purpose and goal. If I continue my pursuit of creative work and storytelling, I may overcome my fear of death someday. Hearing Kim JiHoon whispering these words like a prayer at the interview's end, he reminded me of Hesse, whom he admired. Not many people nowadays know what man is. Many feel it and therefore die more easily, just as I shall die more easily when I've finished writing the story. Taken from Damien by Hesse. Before the interview, the IIN interview team imagined Kim to be a burly captain running his company single-handedly, but the Kim he showed to us during the interview was a troubled young man who spoke delicately and chose his words carefully while also possessing the impressionable soul of a young boy. It may have been the family that he himself built that saved this fiercely independent young man when he was on the verge of being torn apart by his role as both artist and entrepreneur, and that boosted him to become a visionary of the Korean gaming industry. How popular and how famous are they over there? Like, can any Korean brothers or sisters like shine a light on, like, are they like, give it to me on like the only other Korean gaming developer that I know by name. I know the troubleshooter guys, obviously, but I don't know the name of the studio. But Shift Up, right? Shift Up is like huge currently with Nikki and Stellar Blade. And isn't Blue Archive? Isn't that also like Korean? These guys must make some money as well. Like, where's Project Moon among all of them? Lastly, we would like to take this opportunity to thank the head of Witken Inc., Bei Sang-hyun, for his assistance with the interview setting, and Rondo, who interpreted. Indie Intelligence Network plans to continue publishing long interview articles. Here they are.
I mean, it's kind of nice, right? Does this work? Oh, Jesus Christ. Can you just maybe make the graphic bigger? Just embiggen it, okay? Yeah. I mean, I want a plushie like that, I guess. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you if you've watched. Oh my God, it took me an hour now to get through this. I didn't think it would be this long. I wonder if there's any interest for this to begin with. I guess I'll see with the views and the likes and stuff in the comments. More Project Moon content coming soon, I guess. More content in general, soonish, I hope. I had some very rough weeks at work recently. I got a promotion though, due to it. Making like a little bit more money now. My hours remain the same. It's just most likely do some more overtime. I don't know how to get it all under control with like family and Babby and playing video games privately and doing the YouTube stuff, which I definitely want to get into it more again. I feel like I've been slacking these past few months. I feel really bad about it as well. Maybe the thing I need is like the new chapter releasing on the 10th of October, if I'm correct, right? Don's Canto. I'm gonna get into it hard if possible, and I hope you guys join me on this journey once more, as you have in the past maybe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and see you in the next video you decide to watch with me, I guess. Bye-bye. Bye.